Welcome back. A young Jewish couple was shot dead outside an event held by the American Jewish Committee in Washington, D.C. The shooter has been identified as Eli Rodriguez, a 30-year-old activist who shot the couple and then started screaming, "Free Palestine." While Netanyahu and the Israel foreign minister have called the murders a direct result of anti-Semitic incitement, Trump has also blamed it on anti-Semitism. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar has also condemned the killing in the strongest terms, calling for the perpetrators to be brought to justice. We'll continue to talk about this with our guest. Joining us on the show is Mr. Mahesh Sachdev, former diplomat, Adit Kothari, foreign affairs expert, Jordan Cope, Middle East expert, is joining us from Germany, and Joyita Basu, editor of the Sunday Guardian, with us in the studio as well. Joyita, what do you make of these killings? This is obviously something which we thought will stay in universities in America, but obviously this is crazy what has happened. This is unwanted, unsolicited and unacceptable.
This is completely unacceptable. This is an extreme form of anti-Semitism. You see, this shows the extent of radicalization that I would say the student community, a section of the American populace. And the thing is, it's not even limited to the US. It is there even in India. If you look at these people, I mean, you go to certain universities in this city and you will find an equally radicalized mindset. The problem with this thing is that when you have that radicalized, I mean, these are inhuman people. These are like, these are worse than beasts, that not only are they radicalized themselves, they are now deciding to act on that by killing people. I mean, this is Hamas in action in Washington, D.C. And unless and until the American society wakes up, until and unless the American political class wakes up to this, that this situation is going to get worse, and especially when you see it in the context of what Mr. Trump has been doing. Mr. Trump has been hobnobbing with the Qataris, who are known radicals, who are known people who have been backing this radicalism, who have been backing all these Hamas type activities around the world. Now Mr. Trump is hobnobbing with them and then coming in and saying that, oh, this is anti-Semitism. Then why are you, I mean, the way things are going, it's almost as if, I mean, Mr. Trump has totally shifted his focus. So he needs to make up his mind. The Americans need to make him realize that the way he is going, this is not the correct way. You have to call out, it's okay to give out one post in Truth Social is okay, but then you are getting in your administration people who are members of militant groups. This Laura Loomer has called out. Okay, so this is what is going on. All this is happening under Mr. Trump's nose.
All right, Jordan Cope, what do you make of this? This is obviously, taking this conflict, taking the anti-Semitism to the next level. We understand that the situation in Gaza at this point in time is extremely volatile and extremely sensitive, but this is completely mad. This is absolutely unacceptable what's happened in Washington, D.C.
I want to iterate that this is a culmination of the concerns of the American Jewish community, which has been screaming about surging anti-Semitism in the United States now for years. Jews might only comprise 2.4% of the US population, and yet, according to the FBI's hate crime statistics, they suffer 68% of all religiously motivated hate crimes in America. The United States, unfortunately, has an anti-Semitism crisis on its hands, and the recent attacks in Washington, D.C. were nothing short of anti-Semitic hate crimes. I want to clarify that the shooter did not target the Israeli embassy. What he targeted was an event being hosted for young Jewish professionals, and those who just happened to come out of the event, the first two, were the ones who he shot. This was an event for American young Jewish professionals and for diplomats in the DC community. He did not discriminate in terms of who came out of that event. He simply shot two people who came out of a Jewish event and an event for young Jewish professionals. And my thoughts at this time are that I question whether his motives were in part founded by the recent faulty statement by a UN official, Tom Fletcher, who came out on BBC and recently stated that Israel was about to kill 14,000 Palestinians by causing conditions of famine and malnutrition, which were blatantly untrue. And so I'm furious right now because people fail to realize that misinformation about the conflict is modern day anti Semitism, perpetuating, whether it be intentional or recklessly false information, does at times lead to Jewish deaths, and it has throughout millennia. People don't understand. The anti Semitism of the past always evolves, and the common theme is that it tries to attribute the worst possible crimes and the worst possible attributes to Jewish people. And time again throughout history, they have been proven to be false. And the way that the Middle East conflict is currently being covered is one prime example of how anti-Semitism continues to manifest in this very hour. And unfortunately, two Jews in the United States of America, far from the conflict, have paid the price of anti-Semitism. It's disgusting, and it's a serious concern for American Jews. And many American Jews like me are now wondering whether this is a tipping point that will enable more violence in the future, while we already have an anti-Semitism crisis on our hands.
Absolutely right. Ambassador Sajdev, it's one thing, to have something like this in universities and raise pro-Palestine slogans, but it's a completely different ball game when people start, using guns on the Jewish community on the streets of the capital of the strongest democracy in the world, the United States. What kind of change do you think is warranted here in terms of the perception that is leading to these innocent people being targeted?
I think there is every need to, first of all, condemn such incidents in strongest possible terms and show that the justice is delivered quickly and very visibly. Secondly, I think the toxic situation, which many of your previous panelists have spoken about, needs to be contained. The situation may have various causes blending into each other, and there are strong views on both sides. But at the same time, these do not warrant the streets of Washington, D.C. being splattered with blood. And I think this also calls for better gun control laws in the United States, where anyone can, any adult without a crime record can easily get a gun. Last but not the least, I think there has to be some movement to bring bring the temperature down and bring the various aspects, various groups together in this saga, which has been going on for nearly 2 years now, and the tensions are running too high. I would also like to await the police investigation into the incident, whether it was a lone wolf incident or whether they were perpetrators, whether they were backers, and whether the motives were what the perpetrator mouthed or espoused. We need to hear more from the law enforcement authorities about their investigations before we can take a particular view. That doesn't prevent me from lamenting the loss of two staffers at the U.S. At the Israeli embassy in the United States, And I think you would, our own Indian community in the United States has had similar bouts with terrorism, similar race crimes, and our diplomats in Canada, for example, have been threatened with death and rewards for killing of the High Commissioner of India to Ottawa and so on. So we are aware of these situations, and we need to have Vienna Convention followed in a more rigorous manner, where the hosting country has to be responsible for the security of the diplomats and consulate officials. Thank you.
All right, Adit. Well, this is heartbreaking and concerning at the same time. Gun laws in the United States are obviously something that were already a concern, and if these gun laws are going to be used and leveraged, to target certain ethnic groups, then of course, this is a cesspool of a situation for the Americans, and a big problem perhaps for Donald Trump.
It's just not a problem for Donald Trump. I think this is a global problem. I think the world needs to have a system refresh, for all of the countries, the law enforcement agencies, the policy makers to fight anti-Semitism and anti-Jewish sentiments. I mean, there is a study which, publicizes that almost 46% of the adults in this day and age are growing up with anti-Jewish and anti-Semitism feelings, which is a very scary trend. Jordan spoke about the trends in the United States, where 63% of the hate crimes over the last decade or so has been, towards the Jewish community. In my own country, in the United Kingdom, in London, over 1,000 incidents have occurred over the last year of anti-Jewish attacks. Out of them, 400 have been in my own borough. So the trends are there for us to recognize. The problem is the unwillingness for the governments around the world, the political correctness that they all sit with, and it is all due to the electoral relevance of things. They're all scared to treat this issue or, perhaps talk about this issue because of the sheer amount of electoral bearings that issues like this may cause to them. I mean, particularly all governments are tiptoeing on this particular issue, and security of the Jewish communities have not been handled efficiently by any community. Joyita Di referred to, Ismail Royer, who's now been inducted into the Religious Advisory Board to Donald Trump. I mean, this guy is a known LET terrorist. He himself pleaded guilty in 2003 to say that, that he was involved in training LET operators in Pakistan. And today, this guy is sitting in the Religious Advisory Group and the board of the President of the United States. I mean, this has got to be the joke of the century. So red lines need to be drawn. I think terrorism, cannot be dehyphenated between the good and the bad. Anybody who indulges in any sort of terrorism needs to be called out, and they need to be treated with the hardest amount of law enforcement agency policies that is possible.
Joyita, Adit made a good point that this is not just America's problem; it's a problem for the world.
Yes, you see, this is why when I say this is the Hamas mindset in DC, these are the people who would have they would have acted exactly like the Hamas has done. If you remember October 7th, 2023, what they did, they behaved like barbarians. And the very fact that these people were this guy was just waiting there to shoot anyone who comes out of that function. This is scary. This is scary because I know so many agency people. I'm an agency alumnus. So you see, I attended their conference recently. This hits us so badly that there are people who are mad enough to just say, okay, you are attending that conference, I'll kill you. This is the kind of madness that is kind of seeped into a section of the population. And to think, I know people who will be celebrating this in certain universities of Delhi. there are certain sections of the Indian population who will be justifying this by saying, oh, you see, what about what is happening in Gaza? The fact of the matter is that, there is no justification for any killing. No killing can be justified, and certainly not the way this has happened. But this is what anti-Semitism is all about. This is what terrorism is all about, and it is sick. It is absolutely sickening to see.
Who do you think is promoting this? Discreetly, who do you think is promoting it?
There is nothing discreet about it. It's happening openly. Didn't we see what was happening on the campuses? This is what happens when you normalize violence to the extent that, you kind of allow certain people to, you let some people believe that it's okay to kill anyone who is associated with the Jewish community, whether they are Jewish or not. This is a major problem. This is normalization. This has happened. Number one, okay, let's put it this way. This is Islamism in action, and this is, along with that, so-called left liberalism is also in action. This is a toxic mixture of Islamist ideology and leftist, extreme radical leftist ideology. As a result of which, this is a manifestation of that, and given, as you talked about the gun control and all that, given that weapons are so easily available in the US, this is the reason why, you combine all these factors, and what you have is a deadly case of anti-Semitism. It is kind of anti-human, if you ask me. So you see, frankly, the American society and American, I would say, governments, their local governments, right down to the local governments, they have got this serious radicalization problem in hand. You see, America, in spite of being so insulated from the rest of the world, needs to wake up to what is happening on the ground over there, because this is a serious problem and it is going to affect Americans themselves.
Absolutely right. And Jordan, for all those people who thought that, this anti-Semitism and, these protests and marches in universities across America were just going to be a show of solidarity, they were pretty wrong. If these conversations were limited to just drawing rooms in American families and other families around the world, they were absolutely wrong. This is something which warrants a lot of action. This is something that warrants a lot of determination from governments to stop anti-Semitism on its tracks.
I want to make something clear, because many of us think that anti-Semitism just simply surged on campuses post-October 7th. This has been a problem that's been ongoing for a long time now. When I was a university student at the University of Texas, a university that fares far better when it comes to not experiencing anti-Semitism in the US, my religious center was actually bashed in their glass on 2 separate occasions while I was there. A man crashed our Yom Kippur services only to scream while we were praying silently that we were all going to burn in hell. There are serious issues when it comes to anti-Semitism, both now and beforehand. And I slightly disagree from how some of our panelists believe the approach should be. I don't think we should be talking about gun control laws. That's a separate conversation. And Washington, D.C. has some of the strongest gun control laws in the United States. And so does the state where the suspect actually hailed from in Illinois. So what I want to focus on is what needs to be done to fight anti-Semitism, which has in fact surged even more since October 7th. The ADL reporting incidents skyrocketing by 360% in the United States. It should be known that when October 7th happened, that brutal massacre by Hamas of innocent Israeli people, there were already manuals ready with talking points ready to go out through the United States regarding how to respond and basically defend, apparently, the actions that had gone on. So what we need to focus on is actually anti-Semitism and its modern day manifestation. And I encourage India, like other US states throughout our country, to adopt the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance working definition of anti-Semitism to make sure that law enforcement in India knows how to better respond to unlawful acts of anti-Semitism like discrimination or harassment, Because the common trend throughout millennia now is people don't know how to identify anti-Semitism because it evolves in nature to incorporate modern political themes to make it more palatable nowadays to different varying groups, whether that be Islamist or social justice groups. In the past, anti-Semitism appealed to very different classes, such as Nazis and so on. And so it's important to understand anti-Semitism as it manifests, and it's important to understand and address the culprits behind anti-Semitism, who often tend right now to be part of the spectrum that involves Islamists in the United States, as well as leftists in their unholy alliance.
All right. Well, that's a valid thing to say that, of course, anti-Semitism is not a recent problem. It's been around for long. And this needs to be addressed for what it is, for the history that it had had for so long. Would like to thank everyone who became a part of this conversation. We have run out of time. We take a short break. Be right back.